I think a lot of people are familiar with Freud's psychoanalytic theory about the Oedipus complex. So what is it? Well, the Oedipus complex refers to the child's sexual desire for his mother and the hatred that he develops towards his father. And the reason for this is because the father is seen as a rival who interferes with this desire. But in reality, it is not only about sexual desire. It is also about love and affection, and sometimes it can be both at the same time. For example, if the mother is very affectionate to her son when he is a baby, but then starts giving all her attention to the new baby, the boy will feel neglected. He will start developing negative feelings towards the father who is the cause of this neglect. And these negative feelings can turn into hatred. Or let's say the mother dresses the boy in pretty clothes and he gets a lot of attention from other people, but then she gives all her attention to the new baby girl. This can make the boy develop a strong sense of rivalry with his sister, and since the father is on the side of the sister, the boy will start resenting him. So this is how the Oedipus complex can develop, through a series of everyday experiences. And as mentioned before, this is not just about sexual desire, but rather about love and affection. And it is not only the father who can trigger this response in the child. The mother can also be an object of the Oedipus complex. In this case, we would call it the Electra Complex. However, this happens much less frequently than the Oedipus Complex. And in some cultures, it might even be unthinkable. Now you may ask, what does this have to do with adult life? Well, according to Freud, if the Oedipus Complex is not resolved, meaning if the child does not identify with his father and take on his role, then the person may struggle with certain issues in adulthood. They may find it difficult to form close relationships with others and may always feel the need to compete with authority figures. This can lead to all sorts of problems in their personal and professional lives. That is why it is important to understand this concept so that we can be aware of its potential consequences and work towards resolving any unresolved complexes that we might have. We can also use it to gain insight into the behavior of other people. By understanding what might be driving them, we can respond more appropriately and effectively. Hello everyone. Here is someone with a short animation to explain psychology. Today we will be discussing the Oedipus complex, which was first described by Sigmund Freud, the famous psychoanalyst. According to Freud, the Oedipus complex is a part of psychosexual development that happens during the phallic stage. This is usually between the ages of 3 and 6 years old. During this stage, the child becomes aware of his or her own genitals and starts to feel pleasure when they are stimulated. At the same time, the child starts to notice the difference between boys and girls and becomes curious about where babies come from. As the child learns more about their own body and sexuality, they begin to develop sexual desires towards the opposite sex parent. So the boy desires his mother and the girl desires her father. At the same time, the child also develops feelings of jealousy and rivalry towards the same-sex parent because they see them as a rival for the affection of the opposite-sex parent. This is where the conflict of the Oedipus complex arises. For the boy, the father is the main obstacle in his desire to be with his mother. Therefore, the boy starts to resent his father and wishes that he would go away. This conflict can be resolved in 2 ways. The first way is through identification with the father. The boy realizes that his father is an authority figure that he cannot defeat in a physical fight, so he decides to become like him. He starts to see his father as a role model and tries to emulate him in other areas of his life, such as in playing with his toys or in helping around the house. Through identification, the boy successfully resolves the Oedipus complex and develops a healthy relationship with both his parents. However, if the father is too harsh or overprotective, the boy may not feel comfortable identifying with him. In this case, the boy may resolve the conflict by rejecting his sexual desires for his mother and choosing instead to focus on his friendships with other children. In this way, the boy avoids the pain of being separated from his mother, but he also misses out on the opportunity to learn about masculinity and independence from his father. It is important to note that the Oedipus complex is not just about sexual desire, but also about love and affection. The child wants to be close to the opposite sex parent because they provide comfort, care, and attention. The child also wants to replace the opposite sex parent in the place of the same sex parent, because they want to be the one receiving all the love and affection. However, it is impossible for the child to achieve either of these desires, so they experience a sense of frustration and confusion. This is what causes the conflict of the Oedipus complex. If the Oedipus complex is not resolved, the child may develop certain character traits that make it difficult for them to form close relationships in adulthood. For example, they may always feel the need to compete with authority figures, or may have difficulty expressing their emotions openly. They may also have difficulty with gender identity and may struggle with accepting themselves as they are. That is why it is important to understand this concept so that we can be aware of its potential consequences and work towards resolving any unresolved complexes that we might have. We can also use it to gain insight into the behavior of other people. By understanding what might be driving them, we can respond more appropriately and effectively. In conclusion, the Oedipus complex is a crucial part of psychosexual development that can affect a person's behavior and relationships throughout their life. While it is normal for children to experience sexual desires towards their opposite sex parent, it is also important for them to learn how to control these desires and develop healthy relationships with both parents. If this process is not done correctly, it can lead to various psychological issues in adulthood. Therefore, it is essential to understand this concept and seek help if you or someone you know is struggling with it. So I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please remember to leave a like and share it with your friends.